Remember when Saturday mornings meant waking up at dawn, grabbing a bowl of sugary cereal, and diving into the wildest animation ever created? The 1980s weren't just about neon clothes and big hair. They unleashed cartoon madness that boggled young minds. Did you know one popular 80s cartoon featured a teenager who literally transformed into a car when exposed to heat? These weren't just shows. They were fever dreams approved by network executives. So grab your cereal bowl as we count down the absolute strangest animated series that somehow made it to television. Number 12, Turbo Teen, 1984. What happens when a teenager crashes into a government lab during a thunderstorm and gets molecularly fused with his red sports car? You get Turbo Teen, the most bizarre body horror cartoon ever marketed to children. This 13-episode wonder followed Brett Matthews, who transformed into a cherry red sports car whenever his body temperature rose, only returning to human form when exposed to extreme cold. The transformation sequences were the stuff of nightmares. Brett's face would elongate into a car hood, his arms would retract into his torso, and his legs would merge into the rear bumper, all while he screamed in what was supposed to be excitement but looked suspiciously like agony. NBC actually approved this for children's television. Brett and his girlfriend Patty fought crime between desperately trying to find a cure for his condition. The villain, a mysterious monster truck driver called Dark Rider, constantly tried to capture Brett to unlock the secret of his transformation, because apparently being part Chevy wasn't traumatic enough. Critics called it conceptually disturbing, even by 80s standards, and toy sales flopped because, let's face it, who wants an action figure that's half boy, half car? Yet somehow, those transformation scenes became cult classic meme material decades later. A whole generation still occasionally wakes up in cold sweats thinking about a teenager melting into automotive form. Number 11, Rubik the Amazing Cube, 1983. Just when you thought a puzzle couldn't get weirder, 1983 gave us Rubik the Amazing Cube, a sentient, flying, magical Rubik's Cube with an unsettling human face. This 13-episode ABC fever dream centered on a magic Rubik's Cube that could fly and had amazing powers, but only when all its colored squares were matched up. The cube had fallen from an evil magician's stagecoach, and it was up to a group of kids to protect their floating puzzle friend. The show paired Mendelsohn-Melendez animation, the Peanuts people, with some of the most bizarre premises ever conceived. In one episode, Rubik literally makes a kid's homework come alive to teach him a lesson about studying. In another, he battles an evil mummy. The talking cube had a high-pitched voice that would make Alvin and the Chipmunks sound deep by comparison. What makes this show truly insane was that it existed solely to capitalize on the Rubik's Cube fad. CBS executives basically said, "Kids like this plastic toy, let's give it a face and magical powers." The theme song, featuring lines like, "Rubik, you're the coolest dude alive," conveniently ignored the fact that Rubik wasn't actually alive. He was a puzzle. The show lasted just one season, vanishing as quickly as the puzzle-solving skills of most kids who owned the actual toy. Most bizarre fact? The voice of Rubik was provided by Ron Palillo, Horshack from Welcome Back, Kotter, making this possibly the strangest second act in acting history. Number 10, The Get Along Gang, 1984. Imagine creating a cartoon based on greeting card characters because, hey, kids like greeting cards, right? That's exactly what happened with The Get Along Gang, possibly the most aggressively wholesome show ever made. This series featured a group of young anthropomorphic animals living in a place called Green Meadow, where they learned sickeningly sweet lessons about friendship and teamwork every 5 seconds. The pilot episode was actually animated by the legendary Canadian studio Nelvana and showed some promise. But production quickly shifted to DIC Entertainment, and everything went downhill faster than a skateboarding raccoon. The resulting show was so sugary sweet it could cause cavities through the television screen. Characters like Montgomery Moose, Dottie Dog, and Zipper Cat spent their time solving incredibly low-stakes problems like who will win the three-legged race, or how will we clean up the clubhouse. There was zero conflict, zero danger, and zero reason for kids to keep watching when they could be enjoying robots blasting each other or Ninja Turtles fighting crime. Network executives apparently thought children needed a weekly reminder to get along, completely missing what actually entertains kids. The toy line bombed spectacularly, and the show vanished after just one season. Today, it exists as that strange cartoon you vaguely remember but can't quite place, like a fever dream from a time when network executives thought greeting card characters could compete with Transformers. Number 9, Pandemonium, 1982. What do you get when you combine 3 talking panda bears with an evil telekinetic alien wizard? Pandemonium, that's what. This Marvel Productions cartoon featured 3 magical pandas named Chesty, Timothy, and Algernon, who could combine Voltron style to form the powerful Papa Panda. Because why have one talking panda when you could have 3 that merge into a super panda? The plot was absolute madness. An evil alien wizard named Mondragor attempted to steal the ancient Pyramid of Power, but it shattered, scattering pieces worldwide and somehow giving magical abilities to random pandas. Siblings Peter and Peggy team up with these pandas to find the pyramid pieces before the wizard does. Pure 80s cartoon logic at its finest. The show's animation quality fluctuated wildly from scene to scene, with characters sometimes changing color or size between shots. The panda's magical transformation sequence was basically a budget version of Voltron, complete with recycled animation and a catchphrase so forgettable that no one actually remembers it. Here's the kicker. The show was canceled after 13 episodes without resolving its storyline. The pyramid pieces were never all collected, leaving an entire generation of children wondering if Mondragor ever got his cosmic comeuppance. Marvel, which later dominated global entertainment, couldn't even make talking magical pandas work in the cartoon-crazy 80s. That's how weird this show was. Number 8. Inhumanoids, 1986. One of the most disturbing cartoons ever aimed at children, Inhumanoids was basically Lovecraftian horror disguised as a kids' show. It featured a team of scientists called Earth Corps battling against gigantic, grotesque monsters from deep beneath the Earth's surface. These weren't your typical cartoon villains. They were genuinely terrifying creatures straight out of nightmares. The main villains included Tendril, a plant monster directly inspired by Lovecraft's Cthulhu, Decompose, a skeletal undead monster who could turn people into zombies with a touch, and Metlar, a living magma creature who ruled an underground empire. These monsters weren't just scary-looking, they committed acts that pushed the boundaries of children's programming, including transforming humans into undead servants and threatening global destruction. Hasbro created the show to sell toys, but someone forgot to tell the writers they were making a children's cartoon. The animation style was dark and gritty, with scenes of cities being destroyed, people turning into zombies, and genuinely tense moments that had kids hiding behind couches. One episode featured a character being crushed to death, not knocked out or captured, but crushed, on Saturday morning television. Parents' groups were outraged, networks were nervous, and the toy line was canceled after just one series despite the show's cult following. The same creative team behind G.I. Joe and Transformers made Inhumanoids, but they clearly unleashed their darkest ideas here. For many 80s kids, this show was their first introduction to horror, creating nightmares that lasted far longer than its 13-episode run. Number 7. Visionaries, Knights of the Magical Light, 1987. Part medieval fantasy, part sci-fi adventure, Visionaries was what happened when marketing executives said, "Let's combine swords, sorcery, and holograms." Set on the planet Prismos, the show began with a major cosmic event that caused all technology to fail and magic to return. 2 factions, the heroic Spectral Knights and the evil Darkling Lords, were granted magical powers by wizards, with each knight receiving a holographic animal totem that represented their personality and could be summoned for battle. What made this show truly bizarre was how it merged futuristic elements with medieval fantasy. Knights rode mechanical horses that weren't actually mechanical anymore because technology didn't work. Their weapons and armor featured actual hologram stickers that would change depending on the light angle, both on the toys and in the animated show. The character designs were absolutely wild. Warriors with names like Leoric, who transformed into a lion, Witterquick, a cheetah, and villains like Darkstorm, a mollusk, and Mortdread, a beetle. Each character's totem animal revealed something about their personality, making this possibly the only cartoon where psychology and holograms intersected. Critics dismissed it as yet another toy commercial, but the show actually featured surprisingly complex storytelling about the ethics of power and leadership. Hasbro had grand plans for the franchise, but poor toy sales doomed it after just 13 episodes. The planned live-action movie adaptation was shelved, and a generation of kids was left wondering why their hologram stickers never actually transformed them into magical animals. Number 6. Galaxy High School, 1986. Imagine being the new kid at school, except it's in outer space. Galaxy High School, created by Star Wars novelist Chris Columbus, who later directed Home Alone and Harry Potter films, flipped high school stereotypes upside down. The show followed two Earth teenagers sent to study at an intergalactic high school filled with bizarre alien classmates. Doyle, the popular jock on Earth, suddenly finds himself struggling to fit in, while Amy, the nerdy girl, becomes the most popular student in school. The alien designs were absolutely bonkers. There were 6 armed basketball players, a teacher with an Einstein-like brain floating in a fishbowl, and a student made entirely of slime who would regularly melt when nervous. One episode featured a character who communicated exclusively through interpretive dance, while another introduced aliens who absorbed knowledge by eating books. The soundtrack came courtesy of Eagles guitarist Don Felder, giving this weird space cartoon unexpectedly awesome music. The show's animation style was unique, with exaggerated movements and wild color schemes that made the alien world feel genuinely otherworldly. Despite its creative premise and surprising depth, Galaxy High only lasted 13 episodes before being canceled, reportedly because it was too expensive to produce. Critics praised its reversal of typical teen dynamics and pro-education message, but apparently, network executives thought Talking Turtles Who Ate Pizza had more marketing potential than interspecies high school drama. Today, it remains a cult classic among animation fans who appreciate its bizarre yet thoughtful take on teenage alienation, both figurative and literal. Number 5. Spiral Zone 1987. If you thought cartoons couldn't get dark, Spiral Zone would like a word. This dystopian nightmare was one of the grittiest cartoons of the 80s, featuring a world partially taken over by a mind-controlling plague. A rogue scientist named Dr. James Bent uses a device to create spiral zones across half the Earth, turning people into mindless zombies called zoners, with yellow skin and black ringed eyes. Only a team of soldiers called Zone Riders, wearing special suits, could enter these zones without becoming infected. What made this show truly disturbing was that half of humanity was already enslaved when the series began. There was no before the catastrophe setup. The Zone Riders weren't trying to prevent an apocalypse. They were fighting a losing battle in a world already half destroyed. Talk about starting your Saturday morning on a dark note. The character designs were unnervingly realistic for a cartoon, with military uniforms based on actual combat gear and zombie-like zoners that gave kids nightmares. One episode featured a Zone Rider becoming partially infected, slowly losing his mind while his friends watched helplessly. Heavy stuff for a show aimed at selling toys. The toys themselves were so disturbing that some countries actually banned them, considering them too frightening for children. Despite critical praise for its mature storytelling, the show lasted just 1 season before being pulled. Spiral Zone pushed boundaries so far that even in the Anything Goes 80s, parents and networks got nervous about its bleak vision. Yet for the kids who watched it, those black-ringed zombie eyes became an unforgettable image of cartoon horror. Number 4. Dinosaurs 1987. Dinosaurs and spaceships. Need we say more? Dinosaurs featured 2 warring factions of anthropomorphic dinosaurs battling for control of Earth. The heroic dinosaurs, led by Allo, an Allosaurus, fought against the evil Tyrannos, led by Genghis Rex. Because apparently regular dinosaurs weren't exciting enough, these were alien dinosaurs with advanced technology who could transform between dinosaur and humanoid forms using a process called dinovolving. The show had human allies called Secret Scouts, teenagers who wore special pendants giving them dinosaur-based powers. In one episode, a kid temporarily gained the strength of a triceratops. In another, the power to survive underwater like a plesiosaur. The scouts' parents apparently never questioned why their children were hanging out with 8-foot talking dinosaurs from space. The animation quality varied wildly, with characters sometimes changing size dramatically between scenes. In one infamous shot, a dinosaur character went from being twice as tall as a human to nearly the same height in consecutive frames. The scriptwriters clearly struggled with basic paleontology, creating dinosaur species that never existed and giving real dinosaurs abilities they never had. Despite these issues, Dinosaurs developed a cult following for its bizarre premise and surprisingly complex character relationships. Ironically, while the show was created to sell toys, the planned toy line was canceled before hitting stores. Michael E. Uslan, who later helped bring Batman to the big screen in 1989, created this dinosaur spectacle, proving that even future Hollywood powerhouses had their weird dinosaur phase. For a generation of kids, the theme song's opening roar became the sound of weekend freedom. Number 3, Cops 1988. Fighting crime in a future time. Cops, Central Organization of Police Specialists, was what happened when someone said, "Let's combine RoboCop, G.I. Joe, and Cyberpunk into one wild show." Set in the futuristic year of 2020, the series followed a team of specialized police officers with high-tech gadgets and abilities who fought a criminal organization called the Criminals risen out of organized kingpins. Yes, both sides had forced acronyms. It was the 80s. Each Cops team member had a code name and special ability or gadget. The leader, Bulletproof, had literal bulletproof skin after being shot in the line of duty. Highway had a transforming vehicle. Mainframe was a computer expert. And Bowser was partnered with a robot dog named Blitz, because every 80s team needed an animal mascot, even the police. The show stood out for its surprisingly diverse cast, featuring one of the first African-American leaders in an animated series. The futuristic vision of 2020 included video phones, advanced computers, and bizarre architecture, though ironically, the real 2020 turned out quite differently. Critics praised the show's action sequences and relatively sophisticated storytelling compared to other toy-based cartoons. Still, despite lasting 65 episodes, Cops never achieved the popularity of G.I. Joe or Transformers. The toy line included comic books that expanded the storyline, offering deeper character development than the TV show. Today it's remembered primarily for its earworm theme song and the ironic fact that its vision of 2020 didn't include a global pandemic, but did feature criminals with code names like Ms. Demeanor and Buttons McBoom-Boom, truly the most 80s villains ever created. Number 2, Snorks 1984. Remember the Smurfs? Now imagine them underwater with snorkels growing out of their heads. That's basically what Snorks was, a blatant underwater ripoff of the popular blue forest creatures. These colorful sea-dwelling beings used the snorkels on their heads to swim faster and even play music, living in a subaquatic world called Snorkland. The creation story behind Snorks is hilariously petty. Freddie Monnickendam, who helped bring the Smurfs to television, had a nasty legal breakup with the original Smurfs creator, Peyo. His response? Create his own tiny, colorful creatures, but underwater. Originally, the characters were meant to be robots called Diskies, before evolving into sea creatures, proving that spite can be a powerful creative motivator. The show boasted some impressive voice talent. Frank Welker, the voice of Megatron and countless other characters, voiced Tooter, a snork who communicated only in honking sounds. A young Nancy Cartwright, who would later become Bart Simpson, voiced Daphne Gilfin years before telling people not to have a cow. Despite running for 4 seasons, Snorks never achieved the Smurfs' success. The villains were laughably unthreatening. The main antagonist was literally named Junior Wetworth, a spoiled rich snork. The toys sold poorly. And while the Smurfs became a global phenomenon with multiple movies and reboots, Snorks swam into obscurity, remembered mainly by those who recognize its theme song at 3 a.m. and wonder why it's stuck in their heads decades later. Number 1, Mr. T, 1983. Wrestling was massive in the mid-80s, so big that even Mr. T got his own cartoon. This NBC Saturday morning fever dream featured the real-life celebrity leading a team of teenage gymnasts who solved mysteries while traveling to gymnastics competitions around the world. Yes, you read that right. Mr. T, gold chains and all, coached gymnasts who fought crime. The show opened with an animated Mr. T proclaiming, "I pity the fool who doesn't watch my show," before diving into adventures involving stolen artifacts, mysterious disappearances, and international crime rings, all somehow connected to gymnastics meets. Each episode ended with Mr. T delivering a heavy-handed moral lesson directly to the camera, usually about staying in school, saying no to drugs, or respecting your parents. The absolute wildest part? Mr. T never actually voiced himself in the cartoon. Instead, they got Brad Garrett, later famous as Robert on Everybody Loves Raymond, to imitate him. Meanwhile, real-life wrestler Rowdy Roddy Piper was voiced by James Avery, who later became Uncle Phil on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. The wrestlers themselves were reportedly unhappy with their portrayals, especially since none of them actually sounded like their real-life counterparts. The plots reached ludicrous heights. One episode featured Mr. T fighting alligators underwater while rescuing stolen Egyptian treasures. Another had him ski jumping to catch jewel thieves. The show lasted just 30 episodes before NBC pulled the plug, but not before creating some of the most unintentionally hilarious moments in animation history. Even Vince McMahon reportedly disliked it, which is saying something considering the WWE's own track record with bizarre storylines. And there you have it, folks. 12 of the strangest cartoons that somehow made it onto television in the wild, wonderful 1980s. These shows pushed boundaries of weirdness that modern cartoons wouldn't dare touch. Which of these bizarre animated series do you remember watching? Did we miss any particularly strange cartoons from your childhood? Here's a question that keeps us up at night. Could any of these absolutely bonkers concepts get greenlit today? Or have we become too sensible for our own good? Maybe we need more teenagers transforming into cars and magical Rubik's cubes with faces to make animation great again. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more nostalgic deep dives that'll make you question your childhood memories.